Just sharing the statistics for you to see that we are on a continent that has a lot of potentials. And the creative industry, really, this is not a better time to have this conversation where finance professionals are coming together to be able to support the conversation and to be able to build conversation around funding within the creative industry. I'm going to share some insights. So we move to the next slide where you're going to see that if we are having a lot of economic activities in Africa, we have African continent actually being able to do a lot of production. What is the role of the creative industry? And you can see that the creative industry from the previous presentations is actually creating a lot of contribution towards the gross domestic product of various economies, and that is very, very critical. So in the next slide, I'm going to share some statistics with you, which tells us that it's as an artist, and then for the creative industry, it is either that we are preparing for the opportunity. So you see that the next slide tells us that you either have to be what, distinct or what, extinct, which means that there are some critical skills that we have to be able to what, develop to be able to understand the funding conversation. So on the next slide, we say what, you have to be distinct. Times are changing. We are talking about AI and other processes which will help us to be able to look at this. This is a quick video which I wanted to just share. What are we going to do to be able to create that skills that is needed to be able to help with the funding? So this is a very short video. Financial management. So we have some statistics that the African music industry is actually valued at about 343 million. And by 2025, this industry will be valued to grow at an estimated 500 million US dollars. This was the PricewaterhouseCoopers research. So that tells us that the music industry in Africa really has the potential to be able to what, grow and also be able to what, develop that skill that is actually important when it comes to the aspects of financial management. Now on my next slide, what do we have to do to be able to position the industry to be able to attract the right kind of financing that is actually needed? So a lot of discussions have actually been had, which has touched on. The first point is to be able to formalize the industry with clear regulations. So just like you have the finance industry being regulated by certain laws and all of that, when it comes to the creative industry, to be able to attract and unlock capital, formalization of the industry with clear regulations is actually going to make the industry very attractive to be able to build and attract that kind of funding that's actually needed. Also, we are supposed to build the right infrastructure to be able to also develop the necessary talents. Now, once you are able to do so, you are investing in high quality recording studios, and then the music schools and other distribution records and all of that. These are all very key elements if you want to really be able to attract some forms of investment. And how do you even develop that sustainable revenue models? And this morning the presentations have been very insightful. So you could see that you have to move beyond traditional revenue sources, where we are now focusing on other digital streaming solutions. We've talked about sync licensing. So as a creative industry artist, you have to be able to now ask yourself, what are the various multiple streams of revenue models that you'll be able to create to be able to create that sustainability that is actually needed. Then you leverage on AI, transformation for scalability, expanding access to market. How do you do market? We talked about marketing and distribution, and then some partnerships to be able to unlock the capital that is actually needed. So on the next slide, I'm just okay, there's a video that is actually various investment stages and the types of funding. So what I want to say is I'm going to take you through a journey where you are going to be able to understand that at every stage of the stage, you will be able to get a different form of funding. So when it comes to investments, there are about 6 stages that you have to be able to go through. So we have the pre-seed funding stage. So as an artist, that's where you have the idea and then the initial development of that idea. So you see that there's a concept development and then the early stage recording. These are all classified under the pre-seed. Then you move to the seed stage, where you are now talking about the early production and the market testing. The kind of funding that you actually need at this stage is also different. Then now you scale up to Series A, So you are scaling up and then driving your revenue streams and are being able to attract different forms of funding, which means that you are now expanding your funding base, you are actually improving production quality, you are securing partnerships. Then when you get to brand and expansion reach, that is where you are now at the Series B funding stage. Then you get to Series C, and then IPO. IPO usually is the initial public offering where you can now list your firm. So if you're an artist or record label, whichever way, you can be able to list the company to raise funds on the stock exchange for the public to be able to participate. So the question we have to ask, and the last panel was actually discussing about the funding. At what stage are you in? So the next slide will tell us the kind of funding that is required. So if you are the pre-seed where you have the idea conceptualization, you now have to start with your owner financing. So how much are you willing to commit yourself into the project? And then they are quite interesting where you now have raising money from family and friends. And then in Ghana, there's also what we call the angel investors. We actually have them in Ghana and around the world. So if you're actually doing a project and then you actually want to raise funds, you have to be able to locate where these angel investments are. But most importantly, you have to be able to know which stage that you are actually in. And then there's also the incubation center. So like the incubation center for music creatives, how do we create that to be able to attract some funding? Then when you move to the seed funding stage, you can now begin to bootstrap. So it means that the money that you are making from the music and all of that, you now reinvest it back without considering any external forms of financing. Then you also have to combine. So you can use the angel investors. So angel investors usually are experienced individuals who would help you with both their experience and then their funds. Now, it's also important for us to know that venture capitalist firms also exist as part of raising capital for various projects. So the venture capitalist firms, what they do is that they usually would give you forms of financing in the form of equity. And when we say equity, they are owning part of your business or the record label, whichever way that you classify that. But that ownership by the venture capital transfer will give them the opportunity to be able to sit on your boards and also give you the clear direction. So you would have to be able to know exactly the state that you are in and exactly the form of financing that is able to be required. The reason being that helps you to be able to maximize what we call the value of your record label, the value of your business, and all of that. If you go in for the wrong type of financing at the wrong stage, it is going to cause a lot of business stress. And that is why it's important that this knowledge actually helps. Then when you get to Series B funding, you can see that you can continue to bootstrap. You can have the venture capitalist firms. Then we also have private equity firms that are also investing in various areas and all of that. Then finally you get to the initial public offering where your company now goes on the stock exchange, and then people like myself can actually buy shares and participate to be able to raise capital. So it's important that we understand these things. But what do we have to do to be able to attract these forms of funding? So there are some key things that have to do with what? Packaging. How do you package yourself as an artist? How do you package your business? So the next stage tells us those important things that we have to look out for. And okay, so we move. Yeah. Okay, so in trying to be able to package yourself to attract investment in the world of finance, there's something we call investor readiness. Ask yourself, have you covered all the legal areas within the country in terms of running your business? What are the things that you are supposed to do? Because that is what prepares you to be able to attract the funding that you actually need. So investor readiness is actually very important. And so to be able to raise a $2 million project for a project that's going to happen, you ask yourself, how investor ready am I? So there are various areas that you have to be able to cover to be able to build that investor readiness. And then you go to the next slide, which actually also touches further pitching. So as creatives in the music industry, it's important that when you are packaging, you would have to be able to clearly identify the problems you are solving, how you want to be able to revolutionize the industry, but support it with data and graphs, which is very important. So now we are talking about putting the packaging together to be able to attract the investment that we actually want. And so it's very important that we look at that. And then slide 2, you clearly show that you have developed developed to address the problem. Then what are the solutions? that you have developed clearly states, and that will be able to catch the attention of the investor. And then you have to show the business model. So you realize that in the morning we've been talking about the various forms of business model. The model should be able to help you to generate different forms of revenue. So it's sync licensing, traditional live show areas, even partnerships, trademarks, royalties. Whichever way, it is important that you have to be able to develop all of these things. And then you highlight if there are some competitors, and then you have to be able to highlight the activities you have done in relation to the problem you have identified. But even on the next slide, we'll be able to see that you further have to go and then now show what the focus on the market opportunities that exist for the investors are. Investors want return on investment, which is very, very important. And then show your growth plan. So whichever model that you are running, these things are very key. And then please state clearly how much funding that you require. And then one thing that we also miss out is to be able to show who the management team members are and the people that you're actually working, because investors actually look at all of these things, which is very important. And so that takes us to the point where we would now be able to look out for that. If we are able to attract and unlock investments as a creative, how do you now keep sustaining yourself within the space to become financially sustainable? Because you wouldn't want to be in the industry where the dead end becomes, I think there was a word that you wouldn't want to end up in a very sorrowful state. But the point is, what becomes my responsibility? And that tells us that we have various responsibilities to be able to drive our own financial management journey to create that sustainability that is actually needed. So these are some of the areas around accounting, valuation, tax management in the music industry, which I would love us to know. So there's the profit and loss, the statement of financial position, the statement of cash flows, and the statement of changes in equity. That actually tells you how your business is doing and all of that. But on the next slide, it talks about how do I even know the value of my record label, my business as an artist. How do I even know my value? That is where you should be able to, before you are even approaching the investors, you should already know what you are worth. And there are various ways by which we do the estimation of the net worth. So we have the asset-based valuation, where you are using the resources that you own to do the valuation. You can also use the earning base, where you are looking at the possible revenue streams you are going to get by the various revenue areas. And then in the creative industry, where branding is even more important, you can use what we call the calculated intangible value. So at every point in time, you should be able to know your value, so that when you meet with the investor and you are having that conversation, we have the numbers on the table, which is speaking to show that this is how the value. So which method of valuation did you use to be able to arrive at that? This is to give us some perspective as we are talking about funding in the creative industry and how we'll be able to unlock the capital that is needed for the industry. So on the next slide, the various methods that I have shared. So you see, the asset valuation method is when you are estimating the value of your assets. Then the earning base, how much all the revenue streams are actually giving you. You can use that to do the valuation. Then you have the cash flow. And then when you are actually focusing more on the intangibles, you can use the calculated intangible value to establish your brand. And these are all very important conversations by merging financial management with the creative industry to let the numbers speak for itself. However, on the next slide, there's how do I now build a sustainable financial management journey? Now you are making the money, the attraction of the investments have come in and all of that. You have the responsibilities on yourself, and I think one of the panelists mentioned, you have a personal financial management responsibility to be able to sustain yourself over the period. So I say that at year one, so you create a decade plan, so every 10 years, and that is a model that works very effectively. At least you should have one. So if you're an artist, you're actually receiving some revenue from maybe live shows. That's actually, so if you are a very young artist that have started, that is your first stream. By the second year, you have to be able to now develop a secondary stream. And that is what makes the conversation around the sync, licensing and all the other things. You know that you have a plan. So that is a financial plan that you are following. So by the second year, if you're an artist and you haven't started developing those other models, you know that no, I'm going to fall short of the financial management journey that I'm supposed to, because that is what is going to sustain you over the period for 3 decades, 4 decades, as long as you exist. And then you can live comfortably because you will have followed a financial wellness journey. And as much as we prioritize our health, your financial health is also very important. So you see that we have the book that I've shared around the money health. The money health takes you through the journey of how you're able to plan your financial wellness journey to be able to sustain yourself. So please go back to the other slide. Now, by year 3 to year 5, you should be able to now start adding a passive income. Even at the point that when you are not actively working, that system that you have built is generating you some kind of income. So whichever way it is, that system has been built. So by the time you are done with second year, you get to the 3rd to 5th year, this is a system that you have. And we've talked about music publishing and all those other areas within the creative industry. So it's really a journey that you have to follow. Then now, you actually by year 5 to 7 explore your skills. So that's when you probably become a producer and using your skills to help other talent. But that should also add to your streams of income and help you towards that journey. Then now you can scale up your income stream to build the wealth and investment. So we all have, as artists and creative industry people, the personal responsibility journey towards our financial wellness. And it's very important. So this is just a guide. So in the book, I was able to show you that you should be able to state how much you are worth by using the income statement methodology and then the statement of financial statement methodology. So you will see that if you are actually having, so on the income statements, you are using your revenue streams. So if you have one source of revenue but your expenses are more, it means that you are basically going to go broke. So you have to do this exercise every month to be able to keep you on track. So the moment you see that your expenses are becoming more than your revenue, it means that you should now begin to think of other streams as an artist. How do you leverage on AI and other ways for which you can add a lot more revenue streams to take care of your daily financial wellness journey. Then we have the statement of financial position that actually estimates your net worth. And that statement tells you the asset that you actually own and then the equity that you actually use to start the business. That is mostly what you usually statement of financial position will tell you how much your business is worth or you are worth as a person. So for example, how much money do you have in your bank account? Do you have other people owing you? What assets do you have? So at every point in time, month on month, you should be able to tell that this is how much I am worth in terms of my financial wellness journey. On the next slide is for us to be able to understand now, to be able to advance your financial wellness journey, you must be able to understand how the financial sector is actually mapped out in the world, globally, and even in Ghana. So you will see that we have 4 sectors. So when it comes to investment that you want to do, look at it in 4 ways. So you have the banks, and there are regulations from the bank that guides you as to what you can do. Then from the bank, you move to what we call the capital market. And that is where you say you want to go and buy MTN shares, or you want to go and buy some stocks from the commodity exchange. So in Ghana, we have the Ghana Stock Exchange, the commodity exchange. You are trading in bonds and shares and other things. It's all the capital market, and that is regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Then now, the third is the National Insurance Commission for the insurance sector. So there are investment opportunities within that sector, and then we have the pensions that we can actually unlock. So please, I just want us to keep in mind that when it comes to financial investment, look at it in these 4 areas: the banking sector, the capital markets, whether I'm buying stocks or shares, or I'm doing something within the insurance companies, or the pension scheme. Once you have this knowledge, you are good to go on the various forms of investment. So we'll go back to the journey that we are now starting. So after this slide, there's a journey that we'll look out for. Please book. So now, year 1, you know that you are getting your life insurance funds and all of that. So year 2, what are the various revenue streams that you can actually begin to think of? I try to put some things there. But once you are thinking of revenue streams, you can also be thinking of the investments that you can also make in the various financial sectors. So think about the banking industry. What investments can I do there? Once you are done, come and think about the capital market, stock exchange, commodity exchange, shares, bonds. Think about it from that point. All those are all ways that which you can make other forms of income. Then by year 3 to 5, you are now creating your passive income. So the question is, what kinds of investment? That's why we do the midterm investment. So you probably go into landed properties, and then you go into some forms of real estate. Now these ones are monies that you will be able to unlock within the medium term. Should you have your other streams of income actually suffering at some point in time, you can always fall on it. Then you are always financially healthy. So you see that I've put here streaming, licensing, publishing, merchandising, and all of that. Those are all forms by which you are creating your passive income. And then now you explore opportunities to leverage your skills, playing an advisory role, producer, using producing skills for whichever area that you want to be able to do. But those are ways by which you have to be able to make some forms of money, because you remember that you are going towards building a sustainable financial wellness journey as an artist. So you'll be in the industry after 30 years, you see that you still have a certain plan that you follow, then it makes you feel financially healthy. You are okay, at least you can take care of your immediate bills and all of that. But what I want to say is that you have to be deliberate. It's a deliberate plan, and you have to follow that plan till the end. So you see that for years 7 to 10, now you are scaling your stream, you are focusing on building wealth, and then investing in the younger generation, and then just moving on gradually till you get there. So the next slide will now tell us the types of investments we can look at. I've talked about a lot of them actually. In the banking sector, there's the T-bills and then the fixed deposits and equity stock and all of that. Those are all forms of investments you can look at. Now we have commodity investments you can also look out for. So at least you know that it's helping you to go through your financial wellness journey. And I use the story of Solomon in the Bible as a story example. So the next slide tells us that we can start from somewhere. I don't know those of us who have heard of John Stephen Accra. He was in Mexico 1968. The guy actually, my country did not send me 5,000 miles to start the race. They sent me 5,000 miles to finish the race. So what happened was that all the other guys had gone ahead of him, but he had a broken ankle. But he said that, no, I'm not going to give up. I'll still. So at some point they saw that, the race has already ended. And then they saw one man coming from the far end, and he was just limping, and he said, look, my country did not bring me 5,000 miles to start. They brought me to finish the race. So we'll have to finish our financial wellness journey to ensure that we'll be able to have a sustainable and comfortable fund. So what do you have to do to be able to optimize your financial management? Set clear financial goals. So as you started the year, what has been your financial goals? You have to be clear about it, and then create a budget and follow the budget. So I use the example of real. Real is what are my revenues, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and follow that. As much as you take your physical health very seriously, your financial health is also equally important. So just like you would go to the doctor when you are not well, if you are not financially well, what do? You have to follow the financial wellness journey. So you must always have an emergency fund that can take care of you for 6 months, and then diversify your investment and revenue streams. It is mandatory. So once you follow the journey for year 1, now year 2, create that diversification. If you can't find, you look for it. So create as an artist, create all of these opportunities, and then have a retirement plan. So now that I'm working in the next 30 years, how is my financial plan going to look like? So there are various ways by which you can. So it's either you are doing the investment and following the decade one, and then you can also voluntarily contribute. If you are not in the formal employment system, you contribute towards your own pension retirement, which actually forms some forms of social security for you. And then if you have some debt that you are using to run, usually debt is actually not entirely bad if you take it at the right time. If you follow the stage, and then when you get to, I think, Series B, you can actually optimize the use of bank loans. What it does is that it helps your business to do rise, because you are balancing your cost of equity and your cost of debt, which gives you a lower cost of capital, and then your business value actually goes up. So that's some of the things that we can begin to look out for. So what I'm saying is that start now, start where you are, start with the fear, start with the pain, with the doubt, but just don't stop. No matter what it is, start, don't stop, because you can do it. Thank you.